Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Conceptualism. My guest today is the composer, Simon Bertrand, and I had the pleasure of studying with him um, in Quebec. And thank you for being on the show, and it's great to have you.
Glad to be here.
So I suppose I should tell people that that your work has taken you all over the world. You've worked with musicians in all kinds of different ensembles. Whether it's Paris or Japan or Korea, and that your work is would sort of be able to be classified as 21st century music or sort of avant-garde classical. Would that be correct?
Uh, mm, Maybe not, but I
Modern
don't
music,
know.
modern music. I don't know. It's so hard. It's so hard to classify these things.
It is.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with you telling us a little bit about your composition practice and and what kind of sonic material you use in your compositions.
Sure. Um, well, the first thing I should say, I guess, as a basis for everything, is that nothing is excluded. So what I mean when I say that nothing is excluded, well, it means what it means. I mean, it basically means that any piece of music I will write could basically start from any sonic material. So I will not stop myself from writing a piece on a specific material uh, because I'm judging this material like not interesting or déjà vu or not enough this or too much like that. I don't care. I can start a piece with any idea, any sonic material, any sound, and nothing is excluded for extra musical reasons. So what I mean by that is that I'm always trying to find, if I'm attracted to some sound, some sonic material, whether it's a C major chord or it's a very dissonant cluster or whatever, I'm searching for what this thing is trying to make me say. And this has been my thing for years. It's like, okay, obviously, I'm getting some kind of I don't know to say, a buzz, I suppose, from this material right now, whatever it is. So my idea is that, well, if I am getting this buzz, this from this musical thing, whether it's a chord, whether it's a few notes, a melodic line, what is this thing? Why is this thing attracting me? Why am I irresistibly attracted to it? And what is it trying to make me say or discover about myself as a composer?
Well, that's a great approach, I think, and I think my approach is also quite similar. Like whatever the influence or whatever the lean, whatever the inspiration comes from, I don't really I don't have a problem. So whether it's the sound of the ocean or the sound of rain, or something like a tone roll cluster, like you said, I don't I like you, I don't really judge the sonic material. I let it ruminate. I don't know if you do this as well, where where you let something sit in your consciousness, and then you let it spin ideas. You sort of allow the work to take you in a certain direction, and you sort of just
Yeah,
follow your nose, like.
I mean, sure. I mean, following my nose is, yeah, that's what I do. Then you're talking about instinct, and following your intuitions.
Yes.
And doing this in music and doing this in life is very different. But anyway, that's another subject. But I mean, as far as music is concerned, yes, I do let it sit. You know, en français, in French, you would say there's a beautiful word for it. I do like that word. It's called mijoter,
Ah,
which means, well, if you're doing a stew or anything that needs to, to cook for a while, slow cooking, whatever, I'm sorry to talk about food. It's one of my obsessions in life. I have many.
well,
And so it's like, yeah, I do let it sit, and yeah, there's a composer in Vancouver, Jocelyn Morlock, who once posted something funny on Facebook. She said there's the process of composing, and then there was 95% time of procrastination, but actually, which is not procrastination, which is the moment where you're just letting things sit, and it's like you're putting a seed into the ground, and what's going to happen. And then there's a 4% time of panic because you have to finish the piece, and then there's a 1% time when you finally write the write the shit. And I thought that was really hilarious, and because it's so much like this. So of course you have to let things sit. Listen, I'll tell you. I think I don't know. I've been composing for a couple of years, over 30 years right now. And one thing I've learned, if I did learn anything from composing music, is that you don't control the shit. You don't control it, and if you have to let it live.
yeah.
And I wish I could live the same way and have relationships the same way too.
That's a good approach, and in fact, that sort of, the idea of planting a seed in the ground and kind of surrendering, that what you're talking about, it's these kinds of ideas have been articulated by Brian Eno,
Yeah.
where Brian Eno talks about, that in, like when people think about Beethoven writing a symphony, they think of him kind of like an architect, where he has the whole symphony in his head and he's just writing it down so other people can hear it. Whereas modern composition, you're not so much an architect, you're more like a gardener. You're planting all these seeds and you're sort of watching how the plants grow, and then you're deciding, okay, I'm going to trim this off, I'm going to, shape this way. And i I think I think both approaches, the architectural approach and the gardening approach, are equally valid. And what's really interesting is when you combine the two. So, like for example, in a garden, you might have a fountain, and the fountain might be made out of marble. So, in that sense, it's an architectural piece. But at the same time, it's in a garden. So, all the plants around the fountain also are integral in making that fountain look good and sound good, and like so I think the best approach is a hybrid approach. I don't know if you agree with that. Where you're sort of, you're in between the two worlds and you sort of draw the best out of each.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I'm fine with hybrid. I mean, it's a term. Any term is dangerous when it's applied to describing work of art. Actually, or describing any human feeling. I think words are very
They do it.
dangerous
They
things.
do it. They do a disservice.
Well, words are very dangerous. I think. I guess that's why I'm a musician, right? Because otherwise I would be a writer. I mean, some people admire words and are really gifted with them. I'm not. And but yeah, I mean, sure, you could use that word, but again, it's a dangerous one. Um, I don't.
So I guess then that sort of leads to the question of purity, maybe, that, like,
It does.
like, does it, how do you keep the purity of the composition? How do you, how do you respect the form, or the
Well,
tradition, or whatever?
how do you keep the purity of a feeling and of a that you might have, that you might feel? How do you keep the purity of love? If love is something that, because the purity that is the way that you're going to handle what you're feeling, and the music is the same thing. I think it should be the same. Of course, it's not, and nobody applies that, and I don't. I sure don't. But I just think that it's letting the thing live, letting the thing live by itself,
Right.
accepting, surrendering to the thing,
Mm.
accepting that you're not the one in control, and and the purity for me, and I'm obsessed with that. And it's as I told you before, I'm obsessed. I have a phobia. I have a phobia of over composing, what we call over compose. And sometimes people who don't like my stuff, sometimes people who don't like my music will tell me, "Well, you sure don't over compose." Well, yeah, I don't. I have a big phobia of over composing. Over composing for me is anything that you're writing in the piece of music that is decided by non-expressive reasons.
Right.
It doesn't need to be there. It
Like,
does not need. And you know what the test is? The
huh.
test is if you take it away, does it make a freaking difference? And if it doesn't, it shouldn't be there. If you're able to take some notes away from your piece of music and it does not make a difference,
I was
then
reading.
why would it be there? And then again, sometimes you might do that experience and then take a very small parameter away from a piece of music,
Yeah.
something that seems to be like just unimportant in the piece, and
Yeah.
you take it away, and then you realize that it destroys the meaning of the piece. So then that means that
It's an integral
this
part.
that yeah, but then if you can take it away and doesn't change anything into the piece, and uh, and then you say, well, why did I write this? What is this there? It shouldn't be there. So a good example of this, and I fail most of the time writing, getting this. I probably all the time trying to get this purity in the music I write. But sometimes I'm able to. There's two pieces of music you might want people to hear in this podcast. One of them is a small piece of music from a suite for theremin and string quartet that I wrote, which is called The Invisible Voice. That was commissioned by Godoyamis Foundation in Holland. It's a Godoyamis Music Week. And one of the pieces is called Stopping Time. And it's, believe me, I mean, there's not much there. If you look at the score, many people sometimes, they want to see my scores. They look at my music and they're so disappointed. And they look at me and they say, is that all? And I say, yeah. And I said, well, yeah, that's all. But then again, if I was a little bit cynical or not cynical, but arrogant, I would say, well, I'm glad you saw more than what it is, that you heard more than what it is, because that's all it is. It's nothing. It's just some chord appearing, a melody appearing, something's going on, an atmosphere, and the piece says, well, thank you, goodbye. That's all. It's like an Alice in Wonderland. Is that all? Yes, that's all. And so this piece would be nice I think for you, the people listening to your podcast, listen to. And then there's another one, which is for voice and string orchestra and harp and two oboes, based on some poetry. And it's also very extremely simple music. And I like to think that sometimes I succeed in excluding from my music anything that is not really necessary accordingly to what I'm trying to say with the piece.
So 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 would you then say your approach is almost monastic? Kind of like a monk, where it's just the bare essentials. It's like you're you just eh, like you're not you base as if it doesn't matter, it shouldn't be there. That's basically the attitude.
Yeah, well, I mean, then you're talking about, I don't know if that's an English word or not, ascétisme.
Yes, c'est ça.
It
C'est
is.
exactement ça.
Okay. Well, if you want to talk about essays and ascétisme, I do believe in that. Whether, you want to compare it to monk thing or whatever. I
Or
mean,
minimalism.
my, I mean, if you compare my music to Morton Feldman, then you're going to think I'm a very noisy and loud composer. If you compare it to other composers,
Yeah.
So I mean, but I do believe in asceticism, which means that you will try to exclude anything that is not really necessary. And that's unfortunately something I only do in my music, not in my life. But that would be, again, another story. Yeah.
And have you composed any works that include synthesizers or sort of instruments that are not conventional in the classical orchestra?
Well, I mean, instruments that are non-conventional. Oh, yeah.
Like the
I've used a,
singing bowl, for example.
yeah, I've used a lot of instruments that are not conventional in the symphony orchestra. I've used a lot. I've used
Theremin.
theremin.
Yeah.
Theremin, yeah, I love theremin. I've used some ethnic instruments, whatever you call them, like a pipa and Chinese instruments and Japanese instruments
Right.
and singing bowls and stuff like that. But you know what? I mean, I don't consider them better or worse or more interesting or less interesting because of their origin. I don't really care. I mean, they give me the buzz or they don't give me the buzz, right?
Right.
So, I mean, uh, uh, so that's the way I work. So, of course, if I happen to run into a Tibetan bowl and I touch it and I play it and it gives me something, then I'm going to use it. And it's as simple as that. As far as technology is concerned, I must admit, I think I'm a bit a technophobe. Not really a technophobe in the sense that I'm afraid of technology used in music, but I hate superstition in music. Superstition in the sense that you think that using this or not using that is going to make a difference. You know what I mean by that? It's like, okay, I must use technology because it's going to make my music more this, or I must not use the violin because it might make my music sound more like that. I completely disagree with this shit. I mean, it for me, the violin is a machine, the computer is a machine.
Right.
They're both
Exactly.
machines.
Well,
I don't care. I don't care if they're plugged into power or I don't care if they use a bow power supply. So but I do try to avoid using technology, today's technology. Maybe it's a statement. I don't know. I don't know.
well, I like that you brought this up. This is a very interesting transition point in that a violin is or was technology and a piano was technology. But it's funny because when something is perfected or when something works and something is like even a chair is technology, but nobody really thinks of a chair as technology because a chair works. You don't have to, there's no glitches when you have a chair, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, this cup is technology.
That's right. That's right.
Because it's some things that permits me to put coffee in it,
Yes.
and that's it. This is a joke basically, but yeah, you
Yes.
know what I mean. It's
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
so this superstition that anything new technologically is better than anything that was there before is garbage.
Right. Like
And
I mean,
I don't believe that things get worn out.
mm,
I do not believe that things get worn out.
and what do you
I
mean
don't
by that?
believe. Well, listen, man. You know what? I think in 100 years from now, if we haven't destroyed everything yet, okay,
Yeah.
in 100 years from now, there will still be bicycles in the streets. Okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and because it works.
Yes.
And I don't care. I mean, if it's invented yesterday, or if it's invented 100. What are you going to invent anyway? What am I going to invent as a composer? I have nothing to invent as a composer. I have nothing new to invent as a composer.
Right.
This is, I mean, this idea that you're reinventing the wheel I'm allergic to it,
Right.
like viscerally. It kills me. I cannot stand it. And you've studied with me. You saw me. I'm
Yes.
allergic to this concept,
Yeah.
the concept of new, of progress. It's I'm just allergic to it.
Yeah.
For me, it's superstition. It's stupid, and it has nothing to do with art.
Right.
If you want to qualify art as anything.
Well, and I mean, see, this is quite interesting because, like for example, somebody like Cameron Carpenter, the virtuoso organist who built himself the international touring organ, the digital organ that he takes all over the world. At the end of the day, it's actually a rather classical instrument in the sense that it's actually emulating a pipe organ, and a pipe organ is 2,000 years old, right? So when people say, oh, how dare you have a digital instrument, and it doesn't have pipes, so it's not really an organ. That makes no sense to me, because it's like, like the console at Maison Symphonique of the pipe organ. There's two consoles. There's a mechanical console and an electronic console. So if you decided to play the organ by the electronic console, are you any less of an artist than if you choose to play on the mechanical console? I don't think so. I think they're both equally valid. And so when people talk about progress for the sake of progress, I don't really like that idea. I think if something is being pushed forward, that and there's a good reason for it, right? Then it's not the idea that you're reinventing the wheel, because it's like, there's a TED talk which I like to refer people to. The TED talk is called "Creativity is a Remix." We're just working with what we already have. We're not really, nobody's really reinventing the wheel. Okay, once in a while a genius comes along of such a caliber that they do things that totally change the way that we think about things, and one of them might be considered like Ramanujan, the Indian mathematician, who used to come up with equations purely by intuition, which would baffle everybody, and most people thought he was barking mad, a lunatic. But then somebody recognized his work and said, okay, this is genius. But really, at the end of the day, there's a handful of people that have come along and really, done something that completely reinvents the wheel.
Yeah, and then again, I will ask you the question:
Yeah.
did they do it intentionally? What I mean
No, no,
is
no. They
that,
didn't do it. They
of
didn't
course,
do
they
it
didn't.
intentionally, because
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
just happened. It just happened. It's like,
Listen, Stravinsky. When Stravinsky's writing the Rite of Spring,
yeah.
do you actually think that every fucking measure of music he's writing, he's thinking, oh, I'm going to do this, and this is going to completely change the history of music? Why is he using unusual stuff for the period of time in the Rite of Spring? Because he needs it.
It's what in his.
He needs it.
That's right. Yeah. It's
That
like,
you need it.
it's what you're drawn to. It's like you're almost compelled in that direction. It's not even like you have a choice in that matter. It's just you're going with what you feel. You're going with what's in your head, and you don't really choose that it's sort of, it's there. It's like, it's, yeah, it's just there, and you have to basically put it out, and you put it out because you have to. It's not something where, like for example, uh, a lot of people, like, who talk about fashion. They'll say, oh, fashion is very, it's very fickle. One day, somebody's wearing this kind of tie, next day they're wearing this kind of tie, whatever. And it just changes. But even when you look at fashion, it just keeps coming back around. It's a cycle. Everything's getting recycled. And it's the same thing with art. Like, people talk about Banksy's idea of destroying something as radically new, but actually, many artists in the past, they would destroy their work after making it. So it's not like
Mm.
this idea of destroying something is something that Banksy invented. I mean, the way that he destroyed his artwork, yeah, you could say that's a little bit innovative. It's a little bit quirky or experimental. But at the end of the day, this idea of destroying something or even creating something, it's age old. It's from the beginning of time.
Of
So
course. I mean, in the case of Baxter, it was more like the statement he wanted to do. The statement he wanted to do with that, with this work of art that was destroying itself, I think was more like a statement and a slap in the face of institutional art.
right, like the ivory tower of art purists.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, yes, you're gonna pay millions of dollars for this thing, and this thing will destroy itself. So it's like a humility lesson. I don't know. I thought it was very strong statement. I mean, I do believe sometimes that works of art can have this conceptual power that they will only be um, used as metaphors
Mm,
only.
mm,
uh, um, rather than something
That's
that is
tangible.
there. Yeah, I mean, it's like you're watching a tree and the tree is beautiful. That's one thing, right? Okay, the tree's there, you're watching the tree and it's a beautiful tree and you're watching all the leaves and the branches and everything. That's one thing, right? And you might consider that a piece of art if you want, even if you don't know, no human created it, that doesn't mean anything. And then you might consider a phenomenon, something that's happening in nature as a metaphor. So that's a difference I'm trying to make in a very sloppy way, I suppose, between pure art, and I'm very careful with these words. I'm sorry I'm using them. I'm apologizing for using them. Between pure art and conceptual art.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people falsely dichotomize the two. They say that they say that, okay, if it's conceptual art, then it can't be pure, or if it's pure art, it can't be conceptual. But I don't think that's true. Like, something that's incredibly pure and beautiful, like, being in love, for example. I don't think thinking about that takes diminishes it. You know, so I think people are
Some
suspicious.
people do.
Well, that's right. So some people are suspicious about artists that think about their work because
Well, that's very interesting. It's a very interesting comparison.
comparison. Yeah,
Be- yeah, comparison, because I mean, as far as human love is concerned, people might think that talking about it is already making it untrue, you
right.
know. So yeah, I mean, there's something about it. Uh,
So then
I,
then then
I
all the
I
all
have
the
a
beautiful.
tendency. I have a tendency more and more to antagonize pure art, instinctive art, to conceptual art. But I might be wrong, and it might be possible for an artist to integrate both, in his art, and to be as a conceptual artist and as well as a very instinctive and whatever
Right,
artist. But I do, in my mind, there's something that doesn't connect there.
right.
So I mean, but
I
if
think.
I'm honest, sometimes I
Yeah.
will actually, even before I start writing a piece, I will conceptualize it a little bit in my mind,
Right.
you know. But the funny thing is, most of the times when I do that, the final piece that I will have of music will be thousands and thousands of miles away of what the conceptual idea I had. So I'm the only thing I'm ready to accept is conceptualizing as a kind of a ignition,
Mm.
something that you use like a match to put fire on something, knowing that it's not going to go there, but you're just using this as a kind of a kick in the ass to get the piece going.
Right. So
And
a kind of flint for the imagination, if you will.
exactly, yeah. And I will do that sometimes, but I'm always amused when the piece is over to realize to see how far. Like the last piece of music I wrote, for example, is a piece for the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and I needed ignition, so I used something which was okay. The concept, which is Weltengeist as opposed to Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist, as you know, is the strong in German culture, in European culture and German culture, the Zeitgeist and the Folkgeist. Also, these are both things that are really connected to the cultural and religion aspect of someone's milieu.
Right.
And then I started to oppose this to Weltengeist, which is another concept, which is the spirit of the world. There's the spirit of the traveler, the person who is actually not really necessarily atheist, but pantheist, and that
Mm.
will actually like to take stuff from different religions and travel the world and just be a sponge and receive things.
Right.
And I started the piece with this concept, and then I found a poem which I don't really like, but I used it as a starter.
Mm.
So here I am. I have not written a single damn note of the piece at that moment, and I'm conceptualizing and using extra musical things to kind of give me the kick in the ass to start the piece. And then once I start writing the piece, you know, somebody that I really like helps me to realize that I don't like that poem. I don't, you know, and I don't care for it. And actually I read it and I say, of course it's not a great poem. You know, this is a great poem, that a great, but this is just like, it's not a great poem, you know. And then I realized that all I needed is I only used this as a conceptual ignition to start my real search. And that search, the real search for the music, is a non-conceptual one. It's instinctive.
Right.
And then we go back to that thing about like letting things stills, trying to see, oh, wait a second, I'm attracted to these few notes here, this chord here. What is this trying to make me say? And then once you're writing the thing, you discover what you're actually really are trying to say, which might have nothing to do with the piece that you
And
wrote, the concept that you had in the beginning. My piece shouldn't even be called Weltengeist anymore, but that's the title, you know. But anyway, it was supposed to be played in November, but then the COVID crisis is still there, so they canceled the concert. So I guess if I should be totally honest, I should change the title of that piece because they will eventually play it if, you know, one day, you know, this shit ends. I hope it will, you know, who doesn't?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's all yeah, that's always a good question to reflect on the dynamics between conceptual and instinct in art, I think.
Mm. And you know, speaking of this search that you're talking about, you know, in a lot of mystical traditions, like for example in Sufism, which is mystical Islam, they talk about the fact that that really the true search is not rational. It goes beyond the rational. You know, it comes from
Of
something
course it
deeper.
does.
You know.
Yeah, thank God for that. Oh God, listen, thank God for that. I mean, if music was a rational thing, then Jesus, you know, let's just all go to hell right now.
Right, and you know, I mean, people have long since said that music is one, the most abstract, and two, the most mystical art form that there is. You know, and before music became a plastic art, like in the recorded age, where you know you can listen to a piece of music over and over and over again. You know, before the recorded era, if you heard a piece of music twice or thrice in a lifetime, you were lucky. Normally, you would hear something once, and that would be it. You
Yeah.
know, and so in that sense music is very ephemeral. It's very it's based in the moment. It's really about the moment.
Well, in nature, yeah, in nature it is. Yeah, yeah.
And you know, it's interesting that we talk about this you know, the divide between the instinct and the you know and logic or reason, because like in chess, for example, like the grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, you know, the best chess player in the world, he when he was a kid, he played completely with his instinct, right? But he also had this ability to see patterns. So really, like when you look at something like chess, it's that perfect marriage between intuition and you know, and seeing beyond, you know, but then also the rational mind and the tactics, you know, of saying, okay, if I do X, then these are going to be the results. So like for example, when you're composing a piece of music and let's say the ensemble is two trumpets and two trombones, then you have to write music that will work for those instruments. You have to take in the range of the instruments. You have to take in the fact that the player has to breathe. There has to be beat
Yeah.
marks, things
I
like
mean,
that.
the
So
chess comparison is brilliant. I'm watching right now actually the Queen's Gambit.
it's
You know
beautiful.
yeah, and I'm watching it, and
So
it's
great.
interesting it's because music is the same thing. Composing music is the same thing. It is because you know your bishop can only do this move, and you know your queen can the queen can do everything. But I mean, you know each piece has limits,
Right.
and it's the
And there
same
is a
thing
there's
with
a structure, there's a kind of hierarchy.
yeah,
Like
and
like
it's the same thing with writing for instruments. You know, and you know you're not going to get that on the clarinet, and you know you can get that, and then you can invent. But the cool thing is you can invent something that's not possible, like you're looking for a note that it's not there on that instrument, but you will mix two other instruments and you will try to get the same, you know, that extra note by mixing two other instruments to get it. So it's like it's a cheat, and composing is cheating. You know, composers are cheaters. We're the biggest cheaters in the world, and I hope nobody that likes me hears this right now, but maybe I do. But I mean, composing music is cheating.
Right.
Because extending the limits is one thing. I'm not talking about reinventing the wheel. I'm talking about cheating in the positive sense of trying to, what is impossible, make it possible by finding a solution that seems to be cheat, maybe not, you know, not usual. Like,
Yeah.
and then it's creativity.
Right.
I mean,
So,
you know.
so if I was to describe what you do, I could say you're a purveyor of sonic mirages.
Would you repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. A purveyor of sonic mirages. So you know what a mirage is? A mirage, like in the desert, where you think you see water, but there's nothing there. So like so so it gives you false hope. You're like, oh,
Oh shit!
there's an oasis in the desert. I see water, but really it's just a trick of the eye. You know, it's an illusion.
Fine, I guess. Yeah,
And I mean that in the most positive sense of the word, by the way.
sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, sure. I guess so. I guess there's a kind of delusion in seeing nothing when there's something, or seeing something in the desert when there's, you know. But that's the way I approach music anyway. And then again, I'm not saying approaching this in life is necessarily a good idea or a healthy idea. But I mean, I do
Well, if
like
you're
to
a
think
con man,
that I do like to think that this C major chord there, you know, that you think is worn out, being heard 1,000 times before, that if you look at it differently, you might see the most beautiful thing in the world.
well that
And this C major chord might sound like so tired and weak and worn out, and you know, and it doesn't mean anything, and there's nothing, it has no heart, no feeling, it's just a dead piece of music.
yeah.
And then you might look at it in a certain way, and you might even think, so you might be so delusional that you might think that you just invented the C major chord.
And what kind of drugs are we tripping on here? Is it mushrooms or LSD or both?
No drugs. It's just no drugs. It's really, it's just a very, or megalomania, I don't know. But it's just a way of thinking that what you feel is new and right.
Right. Right.
Never been felt before and never been seen before. What I see has never been seen, has never been heard,
And
has never been loved, and therefore I can use it and make it new.
well, and I think that's part of the beauty of the human condition, is that really at the end of the day, everything is new. Even if somebody else has experienced it, they haven't experienced it through your mind or through your senses. So
And I haven't experienced it through their minds. And there's nothing I can do about that, you know. So it's a circular thing.
yes.
I extremely, very much believe in music and in life, and human relations and love and anything else, in circular,
Yeah.
circular.
It's cyclic. It's cyclic. It's a circle. Yeah.
I believe in that.
So then
It's
so
it
then
keeps me going, you know,
so
because
then
otherwise you go into despair. Otherwise you go into despair. I don't like despair. I like to keep going. I like so I need this circular way of thinking
mm,
as a way of staying feeling, staying alive. and feeling that I'm still alive in the world.
So
Yeah.
then, so then, you would that? So then, I mean, do you think like do you think in terms of many lives? Do you believe in reincarnation or anything like that? And when I say reincarnation, I don't just mean like you're born again. I mean like in terms of music. Do you believe in like a reincarnation of, like, let's say like you make a piece of music, and then 20, 30 years later you make another piece of music that is self-referential, for example.
No, I believe in that for sure. As
Okay.
far as, but not as humans. As humans, this is a one-way ticket as far as I'm concerned, and you do what you can with it. But as far as music, well, I mean, yeah, it's a fact, right? If I'm not there tomorrow, well, the music I wrote is still there, which doesn't mean it's going to be played, and doesn't mean it's going to be heard, and doesn't mean that it's good. But it's just a factual thing. The music is there, and I mean, it's something that you leave behind. Jacques Brel used to say that you have to leave. French singer Jacques Brel used to say that you have to leave something behind, whether it's a poem, a song, or a child. You know, uh, I'm not talking about posterity here. I'm talking about what you leave behind as a statement that you were there, and that as a témoignage. I don't know how to say that in English. Maybe it's an English word, témoignage, as a statement. I mean, no, as a I have been here. I
Yeah.
have witnessed. I have seen. I have
I
witnessed.
have I have borne witness. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
yeah. In fact, I'm glad that you brought this up, because one of the classes that I taught was bearing witness to the human condition. That's actually a class that I taught, uh,
Oh God.
and 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 I think
Maybe I should take that class. You take. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, sure.
and
I'm interested by that class.
and it, I mean, it was great, when we talked about the different ways to bear witness. Like, there's passive ways that, for example, if you're if you're if you're there and you see it, that's one way of witnessing something. But another way of witnessing something is acknowledging it, or taking part in it, or deciding that this is something that you don't want to be part of. That's another way of bearing witness. Like, for example, like there's this story of Oscar Peterson, being approached by a white fan of his, who said to him, I love your music, but I can't shake your hand because you're a black man. you know like, so
Yeah.
when you're dealing with that kind of situation, then Oscar Peterson had to bear witness to this injustice, and then the way that he chose to react was one way of bearing witness, and making a statement, you know
Mm.
and and so I think this idea of bearing witness is very deep. It's a huge subject, and I think they should teach. I think they should teach this course in university, bearing witness to the human condition. I think they should teach that at
Huh.
university.
Well, I mean, I don't. I think that would be a. It couldn't make things worse for sure. It couldn't make things worse.
That's high
I mean,
praise coming
I
from you.
would. I mean, listen a phrase. If you run for any kind of public office and you bring this up, I will definitely do something that I haven't done in years, which is cast a ballot. Because yeah, I mean that wouldn't hurt.
Yeah,
I think this idea would not hurt humanity for sure. Yeah. Well, wow, that was interesting.
have you ever written a composition for the carillon, the bells?
Oh, don't get me started on that, please.
I actually, this sounds interesting. I want to get you started on
No,
this.
no, no, no. I
Go
will
on,
not get.
tell me you
I'm
hate
not.
the carillon.
No, no. You will not get me started on that, and this will not be in the final cut of the podcast, or I will sue you. Because there was a competition a few years ago organized by the Canadian government, and I actually made an online petition against it because they were asking composers to let go of the royalties It was a big competition for the carry-on of the parliament of our country, of the
Right,
government.
The Ottawa one, the peace.
Yeah, and they were giving a huge $800 for the first prize and asking the composer to resign all his royalties. And I took a big fight and I won that fight to force them to pay royalties to the composer who would win. And this was a very shameful thing. And please do not keep this portion of the interview in the podcast, or I will cut you in pieces and put you in my freezer.
That sounds very.
Was that scary? Was that scary?
That was a little bit scary. You definitely checked off the serial killer vibe. You know, I mean, very good. You did a good job. I'm sufficiently frightened.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean it. Because there's plenty of good stuff in what we said already.
Yeah. No, I know.
Very, very. You know, I think it's, and just between you and me, I think this might be one of the best interviews I've ever done, talking about music and art and anything. So just edit it, and I will send, put the theremin and string quartet thing, and then you might put also the voice and string piece.
Right.
And I will send it to you right now. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to take more than 30 seconds of each movement because of this copyright shit. There's three movements in the piece, so you may take 30 seconds of each movement and use those three cuts together.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as the theremin and string quartet stopping time, this piece,
yeah,
you can use all of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm not going to put orchestral music because I'm not allowed to, because that's how stupid our system is. Because you're not allowed, even on a fucking podcast, to use any recording of orchestral music, because then you have to pay the orchestra thousands of dollars. And it's as stupid as that. So that's why all you will be able to put is 30 seconds of this string and voice piece, and also but it gives the vibe, you know, and the stopping time piece is very good. And the three leader, just take 30 seconds of each movement. Okay. When are you going to put that online? I would love it to be online tonight. Or tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, actually, I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't have to do any editing, but now because of because of your little spiel about the fighting with the people about the royalties, now I'm gonna have to go and edit that. But honestly.
Okay, and then you need a final version, right? Okay, let's do it so you can cut. The cut is going to be here.
Okay.
And yeah, but all these things have been like on my mind for years and years, and it's such a pleasure to be able to discuss them with you.
Well, thank you so much for being open to doing this, and to having such a frank and candid conversation. This is exactly the reason that I created the podcast, is to have these kinds of conversations.
Well, I had a blast and it was fun, so I'm looking forward to see it online and send it to people. Yeah. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
All right. Okay. You stay safe now.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye.